The cabin air felt thick with exhaustion and irritation. Baby Zion had been screaming for 3 hours and 17 minutes. Her tiny fists waved in the air as her father bounced her, rocked her, and whispered to her. Nothing worked. Caleb Ashford stood in the narrow aisle between rows 14 and 15, his dress shirt wrinkled and damp with sweat. His eyes were red. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the baby against his shoulder. A businessman in row 12 closed his laptop with a sharp snap. A woman behind him muttered something under her breath. 2 flight attendants had already tried to help. They offered bottles, blankets, and gentle suggestions. The baby only cried louder. Caleb's jaw tightened. He felt the weight of every glance, every sigh, every pair of eyes that blamed him for disturbing their peace. He was a single father, a man drowning in grief and sleepless nights, a man who had prayed more in the last 6 months than in his entire life. And still, nothing changed. Then, from 3 rows back, a woman stood. She was older, maybe 65, with silver hair pulled neatly into a low bun. Her movements were slow but deliberate. She wore a simple navy cardigan and walked forward with quiet purpose. No one noticed her at first. Before we go deeper, kindly show us a little bit of kindness. If you're watching from anywhere in the world right now, drop a comment and let us know where you are. Kindly like this video and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories. It won't take you more than 5 seconds. We appreciate your kindness. Mother Imani Whitaker stopped beside Caleb. She did not speak immediately. She simply stood there, her hands folded in front of her, waiting for him to notice. When he finally looked up, his face was tight with frustration and shame. "Excuse me," she said softly. "May I hold her?" Caleb blinked. "What?" "Your baby," Mother Imani repeated. "May I carry her for a moment?" He hesitated. A stranger, an older woman. What could she possibly do that he had not already tried? But desperation made him nod. He carefully transferred the crying infant into Mother Imani's arms. The baby's little body stiffened, her wails piercing the cabin once more. Passengers shifted in their seats. Someone groaned. Mother Imani adjusted the baby gently against her chest. She closed her eyes. Then, in a voice so low it was almost a whisper, she began to hum. The melody was old, ancient even. A hymn her own grandmother had sung to her as a child. The notes were slow and steady, rising and falling like a soft wave. At first, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the baby's cries began to quiet. Her little fists unclenched. Her breathing slowed. Her head turned slightly toward Mother Imani's heartbeat. Within 30 seconds, Zion was silent. The cabin fell into a stunned hush. Caleb stared at the woman holding his daughter. His mouth opened, but no words came. The businessman in row 12 leaned forward, eyes wide. A flight attendant froze mid-step in the aisle. Mother Imani continued to hum, her eyes still closed, her expression peaceful. She swayed gently from side to side, as if the rest of the world did not exist. Zion's tiny fingers curled around the fabric of Mother Imani's cardigan. Her eyelids grew heavy. And then, impossibly, the baby fell asleep. Complete silence blanketed the plane. Caleb felt his throat tighten. He did not understand what had just happened. He did not know this woman. He did not know her name, her story, or why she had stood up when no one else would. But something deep inside him knew that this was not ordinary. Mother Imani opened her eyes slowly. She looked down at the sleeping infant in her arms, and for just a moment, her lips trembled. She handed the baby back to Caleb without a word. He took Zion carefully, afraid that any sudden movement might shatter the fragile peace. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice cracked. "I don't know what you did, but thank you." Mother Imani nodded once. She did not smile. She did not explain. She simply turned and walked back to her seat. Caleb stood there for a long moment, cradling his sleeping daughter, feeling the weight of something he could not name pressing against his chest. Around him, passengers exchanged glances. Some looked confused, Others looked relieved, but no one spoke. The plane continued its descent toward Houston, and Caleb could not stop staring at the woman 3 rows back. Mother Imani returned to her seat and fastened her seatbelt. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not. She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. The baby's face had stirred something in her, something buried, something she had spent years trying to accept and release. She had lost her daughter, not recently, not suddenly. 17 years ago, Nola had left home at 18, angry, hurt, full of bitterness that Mother Imani had never fully understood. They had argued, words were said, doors were slammed. And then Nola was gone. Mother Imani had prayed every single day since then. She had asked God to bring her daughter home. She had written letters that were never answered. She had called numbers that were disconnected. For years, she believed Nola was alive somewhere, living a life that did not include her. Then, 3 years ago, a phone call came. A hospital in Houston. A woman matching Nola's description had been brought in after a car accident. She had no identification. No family could be found. By the time Mother Imani arrived, the woman was already gone. The hospital staff had been kind but firm. The body had been cremated. There was nothing left to see. Mother Imani had grieved alone. She had returned to Atlanta with an urn and a weight that never lifted. But now, on this plane, holding that baby, she had felt something she could not explain, a pull, a whisper in her spirit that made no logical sense. She opened her eyes and looked down at her hands. They were wrinkled, worn, hands that had worked hard for decades, hands that had folded in prayer more times than she could count. She did not know why she had stood up. She did not know why the baby had stopped crying. But she knew, deep in her bones, that God was doing something. The plane wheels touched down with a gentle thud. Houston, the city where her daughter had disappeared, the city where she had buried her hope. Mother Imani gathered her small carry-on bag and waited for the cabin doors to open. Passengers began to file out slowly. She stayed in her seat, letting others pass. Then she saw him. Caleb Ashford stood near the front of the plane, baby Zion still asleep in his arms. He was speaking quietly to a flight attendant, nodding, adjusting the diaper bag on his shoulder. Mother Imani rose and moved toward the exit. As she passed him, Caleb looked up. Their eyes met. He opened his mouth to say something, but Mother Imani simply nodded and kept walking. She did not want his gratitude. She did not want his questions. She wanted to get off this plane and breathe. But as she stepped into the jet bridge, she heard footsteps behind her. "Ma'am, wait, please." She stopped. Caleb caught up to her, slightly out of breath, the baby still cradled against his chest. "I'm sorry," he said. I need to know your name." Mother Imani studied him for a moment. His face was lined with exhaustion. His eyes were kind but haunted. "Imani," she said quietly. "Imani Whitaker." He nodded slowly. "I'm Caleb. Caleb Ashford." They stood there in the narrow walkway as other passengers moved around them. "I don't know what you did back there," Caleb said, "but you saved me. You saved us." Mother Imani looked down at the baby. Zion's little face was peaceful, her breathing soft and steady. Something twisted in Mother Imani's chest. "She's beautiful," she said softly. Caleb swallowed hard. "She is. She's all I have." Mother Imani lifted her eyes to his. She saw grief there, loss, the kind of pain that only comes from loving someone deeply and losing them too soon. "Take care of her," she said. Caleb nodded. Then, after a moment, he spoke again. "Do you have someone picking you up?" Mother Imani shook her head. "I'll manage." "Please," Caleb said. "Let me give you a ride." "It's the least I can do." She hesitated. "I'm not asking for anything," he added quickly. I want to say thank you properly." Mother Imani looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "All right." The drive from the airport was quiet. Caleb's car was clean but cluttered with baby supplies. A car seat, blankets, bottles, the evidence of a man trying his best to hold life together. Mother Imani sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded in her lap, watching the city pass by through the window. Houston had changed since she had last been here. New buildings, new roads, but the weight of the place felt the same. Caleb glanced at her occasionally, as if trying to find the right words. Finally, he spoke. "Do you live here, in Houston?" "No," Mother Imani said. "Atlanta. I was just visiting an old friend." "How long are you staying?" "I fly back tomorrow evening." Caleb nodded. He adjusted his grip on the steering wheel. "I know this might sound strange," he said slowly, "but would you mind coming to my house for a little while? Just for dinner, or coffee, whatever you'd like?" Mother Imani turned to look at him. "Why?" He exhaled. "Because I've been alone in this for 6 months. And today on that plane you did something no one else could. I don't know if it was God or just... I don't know. But I'd like to talk. If that's okay." There was no flirtation in his voice. No hidden agenda. Just exhaustion and gratitude. Mother Imani considered it. She did not know this man. She had no reason to trust him. But something in her spirit said to stay. "All right," she said quietly. Caleb's shoulders relaxed. "Thank you." They drove for another 20 minutes before pulling into a quiet neighborhood. The houses were large but not extravagant. Trees lined the streets. Children's bicycles sat on front lawns. Caleb parked in the driveway of a 2-story home with a neatly trimmed yard. He carried Zion inside, still asleep, and Mother Imani followed. The house was clean but cold. There were no photos on the walls, no decorations, no warmth. It felt like a place where someone existed but did not live. Caleb laid Zion gently in a bassinet near the living room couch. He stood there for a moment watching her sleep, then turned to Mother Imani. "Can I get you something to drink? Water? Tea?" "Water is fine." He disappeared into the kitchen, and Mother Imani stood alone in the living room. Her eyes moved slowly across the space. Everything was tidy. Organized, controlled. But there was sadness here, a grief that had soaked into the walls. Caleb returned with 2 glasses of water and handed her one. "Thank you," she said. They sat down on opposite ends of the couch. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Caleb set his glass down and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly. "I don't know how to be a father alone." Mother Imani sipped her water. She did not rush him. "Everyone keeps telling me it'll get easier," he continued. "But it hasn't. Not yet." "Grief doesn't follow a schedule," Mother Imani said softly. Caleb looked at her. "You sound like you know." She nodded once. "I do." He waited, but she did not elaborate. Instead, she looked around the room again. And that was when she saw it. On a small table near the window. A framed photograph. Her breath caught. The woman in the photo was young, maybe 25. She had warm brown skin and soft eyes. She was smiling, but there was something distant in her expression, something guarded. Mother Imani stood slowly. Her legs felt weak. She walked toward the table, her heart pounding in her chest. She picked up the frame with trembling hands. The woman in the photo was her daughter, Nola. Before we continue, if this story is moving you, don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment. Let's keep this community strong. Mother Imani's fingers tightened around the frame. Her vision blurred. She could not breathe. Behind her, Caleb stood up. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She did not answer. She stared at the photo, at the face she had not seen in 17 years. At the daughter she had buried 3 years ago, but this photo was recent. Nola looked older, tired, but alive. "Ma'am?" Mother Imani turned slowly. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Who is this?" Caleb's face went pale. He stepped forward carefully as if approaching something fragile. That's Zion's mother." Mother Imani's legs gave out. She sank onto the couch, still clutching the photo. Caleb knelt beside her. "Ma'am, please. What's wrong?" She looked up at him. Tears streamed down her face. "This is my daughter." The room went silent. Caleb stared at her. "What?" "This is Nola," Mother Imani said, her voice breaking. "My daughter, Nola Whitaker." Caleb's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mother Imani looked down at the photo again. "They told me she was dead. 3 years ago. A hospital in Houston. They said she died in a car accident." Caleb shook his head slowly. No, that's not possible." "Then where is she?" Mother Imani demanded, her voice rising. "Where is my daughter?" Caleb stood and ran his hands through his hair. He turned away from her, his chest heaving. "She's not dead," he said quietly. Mother Imani's heart stopped. "What?" Caleb turned back to her. His eyes were red. "She's not dead," he repeated. "But she's not here either." Mother Imani stood on shaking legs. "Where is she?" Caleb's voice cracked. "She's in a hospital. She's been in a coma for 6 months." The world tilted. Mother Imani gripped the back of the couch to steady herself. "A coma," she whispered. Caleb nodded. "She gave birth to Zion. There were complications. The doctor said she coded twice on the table. They brought her back. But she never woke up." Mother Imani pressed a hand to her mouth. "I've been praying for her to wake up," Caleb said. "Every single day. But nothing's changed." Mother Imani looked down at the sleeping baby in the bassinet. Her granddaughter. "Where is she?" Mother Imani asked, her voice barely audible. "Which hospital?" "Memorial Hermann, Southeast Houston." Mother Imani nodded slowly. She set the photo down carefully on the table. Then she turned to Caleb. "Take me to her." The hospital hallways smelled like bleach and exhaustion. Mother Imani walked beside Caleb, her steps slow but steady. Zion was strapped to his chest in a baby carrier, her tiny head resting against him. They rode the elevator in silence. 4th floor. The doors opened. Caleb led her down a long corridor lined with rooms. Machines beeped steadily from behind curtains. Nurses moved quietly from one station to another. He stopped in front of room 427. His hand rested on the door handle, but he did not open it right away. "She looks different," he said quietly. "The tubes, the machines. It's hard to see her like this." Mother Imani placed a hand on his arm. "I'm ready." Caleb pushed the door open. The room was dim. Soft light filtered through a single window. A heart monitor beeped in a steady rhythm. And there, in the bed, was Nola. Mother Imani's breath left her body. Her daughter lay still, her eyes closed, her chest rising and falling with the help of a ventilator. Her hair was longer than Mother Imani remembered. Her face was thinner, but it was her. Mother Imani moved forward slowly. She reached the bedside and sank into the chair beside it. Her hand hovered over Nola's for a moment before finally touching her. The skin was warm, alive. Mother Imani began to weep, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, broken sobs that came from a place too deep for words. Caleb stood near the door, holding Zion, his own eyes wet. "I met her 2 years ago," he said softly. "She was working at a cafe downtown. She didn't talk much, kept to herself. But there was something about her, something strong." Mother Imani listened, her hand still holding Nola's. "We became friends first," Caleb continued. "She didn't trust easily. She had walls. But eventually she let me in. We fell in love, got married at City Hall. Nothing big, just us and a witness." He paused, his voice thick. "She got pregnant. She was terrified. But I told her we'd be okay. That we'd figure it out together." Mother Imani wiped her eyes. "When she went into labor, everything seemed fine at first," Caleb said. "But then something went wrong. The baby's heart rate dropped. Nola started bleeding. They rushed her into emergency surgery." He looked down at Zion. "They saved the baby. But Nola, She coded twice. They brought her back, but she never woke up. Mother Imani's voice was barely a whisper. How long? 6 months. Almost 7 now. Mother Imani looked at her daughter's face. 6 months. For 6 months, Nola had been here. Alive. Breathing. And Mother Imani had not known. The doctors say there's brain activity, Caleb said, but they don't know if she'll ever wake up. They've been suggesting that we consider other options. Mother Imani's head snapped up. No. Caleb met her eyes. I haven't agreed to anything. I won't. But they keep saying she's not improving. Mother Imani stood. Her voice was firm. She's alive. That's all that matters. Caleb nodded slowly. Mother Imani turned back to Nola. She leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead. I'm here now, she whispered. I'm not leaving. Days turned into weeks. Mother Imani canceled her flight back to Atlanta. She found a small extended-stay hotel near the hospital and moved in with 1 suitcase and a Bible. Every morning, she woke before sunrise, prayed, and walked to the hospital. She sat beside Nola's bed for hours. She talked to her, read to her, sang the same old hymns she had hummed on the plane. Caleb visited every afternoon with Zion. He would sit on the opposite side of the bed, holding the baby, watching Mother Imani work. The nurses grew used to her presence. They stopped asking if she needed anything. They simply nodded when she arrived and left fresh water by the bedside. Any change? Caleb would ask each time. Not yet, Mother Imani would reply. But she never sounded defeated, just patient. Caleb, on the other hand, was struggling. He had returned to work part-time, but his mind was never fully there. He would forget meetings, miss calls, stare out the window during presentations. At night, he would sit in Zion's nursery, rocking her to sleep, wondering if she would ever know her mother. One evening, after putting the baby down, he returned to the hospital. Mother Imani was still there, of course. She sat in her usual chair, her hands folded over Nola's. You should go home, Caleb said gently. Get some rest. Mother Imani shook her head. Not yet. Caleb sat down. You've been here every day for 2 months. I know. The doctors say she's stable. She's not getting worse, but she's not getting better either. Mother Imani looked at him. Do you believe in miracles, Caleb? He hesitated. I want to. But you don't. He looked down. I prayed for her to wake up. I prayed harder than I've ever prayed for anything. And nothing happened. Mother Imani nodded slowly. Sometimes God's timing doesn't match ours. What if she never wakes up? Caleb asked, his voice breaking. What if I've been holding on to hope for nothing? Mother Imani reached across the bed and took his hand. Hope is never for nothing, she said quietly, even when we can't see the outcome. Caleb's shoulders shook. He covered his face with his free hand and wept. Mother Imani sat with him in silence, holding his hand, letting him grieve. After a long while, he wiped his eyes and stood. I should go, he said. Zion will wake up soon. Mother Imani nodded. He started toward the door, then stopped. Thank you, he said, for being here, for her, for us. Mother Imani smiled softly. I'm her mother. I'm not going anywhere. Caleb left. Mother Imani turned back to Nola. She began to hum again, the same hymn, over and over. Outside the window, the city lights flickered in the darkness, and in the stillness of room 427, something shifted. Nola's fingers twitched. Mother Imani stopped humming. She stared down at her daughter's hand. It happened again, a small, almost imperceptible movement. Mother Imani's heart raced. She leaned forward. Nola? Nothing. But the machines continued to beep steadily. Mother Imani sat back slowly, her pulse still pounding. She did not call the nurses. She did not tell Caleb. She simply closed her eyes and prayed. If this story is gripping your heart, leave a comment and tell us what you're feeling. Don't forget to like this video so we can keep sharing these powerful stories. 3 months had passed. Mother Imani had stopped counting the days. She simply showed up, every morning, every afternoon, every night if needed. The doctors had stopped encouraging optimism. They spoke in careful clinical tones. They talked about long-term care facilities, about quality of life. But Mother Imani did not listen. She sang. She prayed. She waited. Caleb had grown quieter. He still came every day, but the light in his eyes had dimmed. He held Zion close, whispered to her about her mother, but his voice always cracked. One Tuesday morning, Mother Imani arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. The sun had not yet risen. The hallways were nearly empty. She entered room 427 and set her bag down in the usual spot. Nola lay still, as always. The ventilator hummed. The heart monitor beeped. Mother Imani sat down and took her daughter's hand. "Good morning, baby," she said softly. "It's me. I'm here." She began to hum. The same hymn. The one that had calmed Zion on the plane. The one her own grandmother had sung over her. She closed her eyes and let the melody fill the room. Minutes passed. Then something changed. Mother Imani felt it before she saw it. A pressure against her palm. Her eyes flew open. Nola's fingers were squeezing hers. Not a twitch, not a reflex. A deliberate, gentle squeeze. Mother Imani gasped. "Nola?" The fingers squeezed again. Mother Imani's heart slammed against her chest. She stood up, leaning over the bed. "Nola, baby, can you hear me?" Nola's eyelids fluttered. Once, twice, and then, slowly, they opened. Mother Imani's knees buckled. She caught herself on the side of the bed, tears streaming down her face. Nola's eyes were unfocused at first, glazed, confused, but then they locked onto Mother Imani's face. Recognition flickered. Nola's lips moved, but no sound came out. Mother Imani pressed the call button frantically. "It's okay," she whispered, brushing Nola's hair back. "It's okay, baby. I'm here. I'm right here." Nurses rushed in moments later. They moved quickly, checking monitors, adjusting machines, asking questions. One of them looked at Mother Imani. "How long has she been responsive?" "Just now." "Just this minute." The nurse's eyes widened. She turned to her colleague. "Page Dr. Ramos, now." Mother Imani stepped back, giving them space, but she did not leave the room. She watched as they examined Nola, as they shined lights in her eyes, as they removed the ventilator tube carefully, slowly. Nola coughed, gasped, her chest heaved, but she was breathing on her own. Dr. Ramos arrived within minutes. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes. He examined Nola in silence. Then he stepped back and looked at Mother Imani. "This is highly unusual," he said carefully. "We've seen no significant changes in her condition for months." "But she's awake," Mother Imani said. "Yes, she is." "Can you explain it?" Dr. Ramos shook his head slowly. "No. Medically, I can't." Mother Imani nodded. She did not need him to explain. She knew. Dr. Ramos excused himself to order tests, and the nurses followed. Mother Imani returned to Nola's side. Her daughter's eyes were still open, still watching her. "Mama?" Nola's voice was hoarse, weak, but it was there. Mother Imani broke. She leaned down and held her daughter's face in her hands. "Yes, baby. It's me. I'm here." Nola's eyes filled with tears. I thought I lost you." "No," Mother Imani whispered. "You didn't lose me. I'm here. I've always been here." Nola closed her eyes and wept. Mother Imani kissed her forehead and held her close. And in that small hospital room, surrounded by machines and monitors and the smell of antiseptic, something sacred happened. A daughter was restored. A mother's prayers were answered. And God moved in the stillness. Caleb arrived at the hospital 20 minutes after Mother Imani called him. He burst through the door, out of breath, his eyes wild. "Is it true?" he asked. "Is she really?" He stopped. Nola was sitting up slightly in the bed, her head resting against the pillows. Her eyes were open. She looked at him. Caleb's face crumpled. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside the bed. Nola, he whispered. Nola, I'm here. She reached out a trembling hand and touched his face. Caleb. He took her hand and pressed it to his lips, sobbing openly. I thought I'd lost you, he said. I thought you were gone. I'm here, she whispered. I'm still here. Mother Imani stood near the window, giving them space. She watched as Caleb wept, as Nola held him, as two people who had been torn apart slowly found their way back to each other. After a few moments, Caleb looked up at Mother Imani. You, he said. You did this. Mother Imani shook her head. No, I just stayed. You prayed, Caleb said. You believed when I couldn't. Mother Imani smiled softly. That's what mothers do. Nola's eyes moved to her mother. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. For everything. For leaving. For all the years I wasted. Mother Imani moved to the bedside and took her daughter's other hand. We don't have to talk about that now, she said gently. You're here. That's all that matters. Nola shook her head. I was so angry. At you. At God. At everything. And I threw it all away. You didn't throw anything away, Mother Imani said. You just took a longer road. But you're home now. Nola squeezed her mother's hand. They sat together in silence for a moment. Then Nola looked at Caleb. Where's Zion? Caleb's face brightened. She's with a friend. I'll bring her tomorrow. The doctor said you need rest first. Nola nodded. I want to see her. I want to hold her. You will, Caleb promised. I promise. Over the next few days, Nola's strength slowly returned. She underwent tests, physical therapy, cognitive assessments. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. There was no brain damage, no permanent loss of function. It was, by every measure, a miracle they could not explain. On the third day, Caleb brought Zion. The baby was 6 months old now, bigger, more alert. Nola sat propped up in bed, her hands trembling as Caleb placed the baby in her arms. Zion looked up at her mother with wide, curious eyes. Nola stared down at her daughter, tears streaming. Hi, baby, she whispered. I'm your mama. Zion made a soft sound and reached up, her tiny hand brushing Nola's face. Nola bent down and kissed her daughter's forehead. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. Zion cooed softly. And then, as if recognizing her mother's voice, the baby smiled. Nola broke. She held her daughter close, sobbing, rocking her gently. Caleb stood beside them, his hand on Nola's shoulder. Mother Imani watched from the doorway, her heart full. This was what restoration looked like. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole. 2 weeks later, Nola was released from the hospital. She went home with Caleb and Zion. Mother Imani stayed for another week, helping them adjust, teaching Nola how to care for the baby, cooking meals, and praying over the house. On her last night in Houston, the three of them sat together in the living room. Zion was asleep in her bassinet. Nola leaned against Caleb on the couch. Mother Imani sat in the armchair across from them. I don't know how to thank you, Nola said quietly. For everything. For not giving up on me. Mother Imani smiled. You're my daughter. I never could. Nola wiped her eyes. I wasted so many years. You didn't waste them, Mother Imani said gently. You lived them. You learned. And now you're here. Caleb spoke up. When I saw you on that plane, I didn't know who you were. I just knew you were the only person who could calm Zion. Mother Imani nodded. God knew. Do you really believe that? Caleb asked. That he planned all of this? Mother Imani paused. I believe he sees further than we do. I don't know why Nola went into a coma. I don't know why I was on that plane, but I know that he was in all of it. Nola looked down. I used to think God had forgotten about me. He never forgets, Mother Imani said softly. Even when we forget him. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn Bible. She opened it to a marked page and read aloud. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." She closed the Bible and set it on the table. "Sometimes," she said, "the answer we're waiting for doesn't come when we expect it. Sometimes it takes months, years, but it always comes, in His time." Nola nodded, her eyes full. Caleb reached over and took Mother Imani's hand. "Thank you," he said, "for believing when we couldn't." Mother Imani squeezed his hand. "That's what faith is." The next morning, Mother Imani packed her suitcase and said her goodbyes. She hugged Nola tightly at the door. "I'll call you every day," Nola promised. "I know you will." Mother Imani kissed Zion's head. "You, be good for your mama, okay?" Zion gurgled softly. Caleb drove Mother Imani to the airport. As they pulled up to the departure terminal, he turned to her. "You saved my family," he said. Mother Imani shook her head. "No, God did. I just stayed when it was hard." She opened the door and stepped out. Then she leaned back in. "Take care of them." "I will." Mother Imani walked into the airport, her heart full and her spirit at peace. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing: God had been faithful, and He always would be. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. Where in your life have you stopped believing? Where have you given up hope? Sometimes the answer is closer than you think. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss the next story. God bless you.